One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Kristy Bayer. Kristy is the Deputy Athletics Director at Emporia State. Greetings, Kristy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Ty.
Now, Kristy, your background. You were the head volleyball coach and associate AD at Arkansas Tech for 14 years, and you've been in college athletics for 17 years total. And recently you made a transition from being a coach and an administrator to being the full-time administrator as Deputy Athletics Director. That had to be an interesting transition for you.
It was. I felt like it was time, as doing dual roles for 14 years. Towards the latter part of my coaching administrative career at Arkansas Tech, I found myself really enjoying more of the administrative stuff and activities that I was doing and enjoying kind of the coaching stuff less. I think it gets to a point where, you're not looking forward to going to practices and you're trying to minimize how many times you're going recruiting. I think when you start doing those types of things, you kind of feel like maybe it's a time for a change in your career.
Right. So how long was that process, the contemplation process?
Well, and you kind of evaluate your career goals. And I want to be an athletic director someday. And I knew I probably had to make that transition solely out of coaching in order to then make that, get to that stage that I wanted to be in my career. So I was really, maybe the last 3 to 5 years of my coaching career thinking about the next phase and how I could transition out of coaching. It's hard. We had a very successful program at Arkansas Tech, and what was hard about that is leaving success. I mean, people don't leave success a lot of times when things are going well and you enjoy your job, but I knew that I had to make that move.
Did you feel in those last couple seasons, as you're making this contemplation, did that take away from anything? Did you feel like you weren't giving the students your all in terms of coaching as you were leaning more and more towards?
I don't think so, just because I feel that, and a lot of coaches feel this way, that their self-worth is tied to their success. So they're going to do everything they can to put themselves in a position to be successful. So I still felt like I was doing what I needed to do to be successful. And our wins and losses and our student success on the court, showed that.
Okay, excellent. And then you come to the decision.
Yes.
You know what, it's time.
Yes.
It's time for me to make that transition.
Yes.
Tell me about the things you put in place when you decided and made the final decision that it was time for you to make that transition.
Yes, and it's kind of a unique situation as I decided before the season started.
Oh, wow.
So I told my AD, and we had to decide whether I wanted to tell my team that I'm leaving at the end of the season and do kind of a Kobe Bryant, last round through things, or if we wanted to kind of keep it secret and, at the end of the year then tell the players. And we decided on the latter, because we didn't want it to be a distraction, and it worked out that final season we were 35-0 until the NCAA tournament. But it was difficult, and probably one of the most difficult conversations I had to have was with my team in the locker room after at the end of the year to tell them that I was leaving. And I think what made it easier for me is I completely left the institution. Okay. And I think what makes it harder for some coaches that leave and go into administration is they stay at their same institution. And coaches, especially those that have been there a long time, their identity is tied to that program. Right. So that is their court, that is their players, that is their program they built. And being around it every day and not being in it would be very, very hard. So I think what made it easier for me is I completely left the institution and separated myself. Right. So that did make it a little bit easier.
Right. That conversation, when you got the team together.
Yes.
I've been in that situation.
Yes.
Right? I was at Michigan State when Nick Saban left and went down to LSU.
Yes.
And he said it's just a window of opportunity for coaches to find the successes they can find. And it almost like he was emotional. You don't imagine Nick Saban emotional, but it looked like he was, because we were his team for 5 years, and it looked like he was leaving. So how was that conversation?
It's hard. That's your family. Yeah. And, it was just a whirlwind of a season, a wonderful season. Mm-hmm. And, it's hard to finally say and make that and tell them you're leaving. Right. And I literally told them and got in my car and left, the next day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but as I said, the cutting of ties to the institute, not completely cutting of ties, but just removing myself, definitely helped.
So You make the transition, you're driving to your new job,
yes.
right? What are the challenges? What are the things you think about as you go into this new role, as you went into the new role, and some of the challenges that you felt, in the first few months?
Right. Well, any person takes a new job, it's just kind of learning, institutional background and processes. And, it did take, a new role about 6 to 9 months to really, truly understand how the university operates in my new role.
Right.
What was hard about the coaching aspect is, is just, as I said, as a coach, that's your identity.
Right.
It's kind of leaving that behind and knowing that that's not your program anymore. So while I was there for my predecessor to help in anything she needed, I tried to really, distance myself from anything that was going on with the team this past season. What I did to kind of still a competitive person. Coaches don't lose their competitive edge.
Right.
So things. What I did was I joined volleyball leagues as a player. I played tennis. I played golf. So still trying to feed that competitive edge is something I definitely recommend for those coaches that are transitioning out.
Right. So you've been in it now for a year and a half?
A little over a year.
A little over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy athletics director.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Tell me about what your role consists of now.
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
So kind of internal and external operations. Heavy on the internal operations, a lot of stuff with coaching management, and I think that's where being a former coach really gives you your edge, because coaches respect that. The other coaches in the program, they know you used to coach and you're fresh out of it, so you can empathize with maybe some things they're going with or some struggles that they have, and so they come to you a lot. So I deal a lot with that, and of course, at the Division II level, your administrators are sparse, and so you're at every event. You're game management at every event. So really, those are kind of the top three things.
Right. Your current boss, supervisor, athletic
yes,
director.
Kent Weiser. He's awesome. He's a Division II legend.
Now, I imagine when he saw that you were on the market,
yes,
in terms of jobs, he was probably excited to bring you on to help him out as an athletic director.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about the Division II world is Emporia State was my first job out of college.
Right.
And so as a 22-year-old, I was hired at Emporia State, was here a brief year, but Kent and I had kept in contact for over 17 years. Mm-hmm. And when the person that I took the job over, when she left, he called me and says, "I've got a job for you." So that's why it's so important to me, maintain relationships in this profession. And so, I came up to Emporia State, and him and I have just been a great fit together.
Right, and you mentioned some of the things that you would consider the most important roles you play there.
Uh-huh.
I'd imagine some of those things, or even some other things, he probably looks at like, I am so happy to have a former head coach in my number 2 role,
yes,
because you understand the philosophy of protecting the head coach, right? Keeping things off of the boss's plate. So
yes,
they can do what they have
yes.
to do.
I think any president, any AD, likes to not have problems, and so kind of that person in that number 2 role is there to help with problem solving, maybe help circumvent any issues that come up. And you're right. I think with the head coaching experience, I was just in that spot. So I think I definitely have an empathetic, I definitely have empathetic input to what's going on in our athletic department.
Right. So what I wonder about is, as you move forward in your career, right, you'll further separate from being a coach. You'll probably always be a coach, but you'll further separate from being fresh out the coach's chair. And some of the responsibilities you'll gain, will you get into some of the strategic planning? Will you get into some of the things that will be, and I don't know what your career aspirations are, but some of the things that will be prepping you to be an athletics director someday?
Yeah, so, actually at Arkansas Tech, I was also the associate AD, so I was, heavy into the administrative side of things. And, I don't, as I further along here at Emporia State, I don't think I'll ever lose that perspective of a coach. I hope I don't, because I think that is really key. I think the best athletic directors can understand their coaches. So I hope I never lose that. But, definitely, I just want to learn everything. I'm at the point in my career where I'm not going to say no to anything. I want to learn everything, all aspects, not just of athletics, but how Institute of Higher Education, how the whole campus runs, especially Emporia State. Institutional knowledge, I think, is key. So yes, eventually I want to become an athletic director, and you need to be prepared for that, and you need to do everything you can right now to prepare yourself for when that opportunity comes.
Right, it's good information. I ask you one last question here. It's kind of an operational question. When you arrived at Emporia State, did you go through the process of meeting and making some strategic alliances now that you're in the number 2 role in athletics with the rest of campus?
Oh, for sure. And I think it is crucial at the Division II level, because we're not going to have our in-house full-time positions that deal with things like, mental health and student welfare. So we really have to strengthen our connection across campus. And so that was, one of the first things I did was get out of my office and went to different places on campus and met different people. And I continue to do that.
Kristy, I think this has been an excellent conversation. I do want to know, although I said it was the last question, I'm sorry about that. Don't want to take up too much of your time here, but there's a wealth of knowledge here, specifically for people who may serve in that dual role, who may think about transitioning, or if they want to stay in coaching or wanted to get into administration on the path to becoming an athletics director. Do you have any advice, a few bullet points for somebody who may be in the role you were in?
I do. Definitely don't say no. Okay. Even little things, any committees that you can serve on, whether they be, with the sport committee you're coaching, or institutional committees, or even in your community. I think community service is huge. I think if you are a sport coach, becoming a leader within your organization. So if you're if you're a football coach and you want to eventually go into administration, get on some of those AFCA committees. If you are a coach and you're thinking about administration, go to your AD and say, I am interested in this. What are some things that I can do to help the athletic department? Now, mind you, you're probably not going to get paid extra for those, but I think it's, whether it's you volunteer to be game day management, at a baseball games. Those are little things like that you will gain experience through.
Right. Well, that's excellent information, Kristy. I really appreciate you joining us here.
Yes, thank you, Ty. It's enjoyable.
That was Kristy Bayer. She's the Deputy Athletics Director at Emporia State. And, of course, this is Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.